Thank you. Richard Vevers is the founder and CEO of the Ocean Agency, a unique nonprofit accelerating ocean conservation action through creativity, technology, and powerful partnerships. That's been working with NOAA for the last 8 years. I've had the chance to work with him frequently on a number of different things, as had Mark Aitken, who's on the call, who is also featured in Chasing Corals. Richard's imagery, projects, and public speaking have made him a leading voice in the fight to save coral reefs, and his achievements include taking Google Street View underwater. It's really cool if you haven't seen it yet. Pioneering virtual reality ocean education, the XL Catlin Sea View Survey, a global survey of coral reefs, the Netflix original documentary Chasing Coral, and raising over $100 million for coral reef science and conservation. Anytime you want to come work for us, Richard, we'll tap into you for that money as well. We've asked Richard to share his unique story and imagery with you to help bring to life the importance of your report.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. And I'll just share my screen. And hopefully you can see my screen there.
Yes.
So I want to say a big thank you for inviting me to be part of the launch of this report. I know how much work goes into these reports, and it's phenomenal. The Ocean Agency, as Jennifer mentioned, we launched 10 years ago by taking Street View underwater. And a lot of the focus of our work has been on coral reefs over the last 10 years. Now, that partnership with Google initially really did sort of transform the ability of people to visit coral reefs. More people went virtual diving on the first day of launching Google Street View underwater than have ever been diving in history. And that's really the power of partnerships. And we've been working closely with NOAA on revealing these underwater environments ever since. Now, the initial project soon turned into a global survey of coral reefs, taking over 1 million images of reefs all around the world. And a lot of our focus has been on American territory reefs. And it's turned into a big education program, which is now available to 90 million kids. And it was really as if sort of virtual reality was made for the oceans and engaging kids in these environments. And we've traveled all around the world and to a lot of different American territories. We spent a lot of time in American Samoa doing surveying there with some of the largest corals in the world. Then we went off to Palmyra, one of the jewels in the world's coral reefs. It's just an incredible, very, very remote and protected location. And then closer home, St. Croix in the US Virgin Isles, where there were some of the most amazing elkhorn corals, which used to be abundant throughout Florida. And we spent a lot of time revealing the different locations in the Florida Keys. But really it was in the end of 2014, when Mark Aitken on the call notified me that there was going to be a big heat wave coming through, and we found ourselves with the right cameras and the right equipment to be able to reveal that. And we became like these sort of underwater storm chasers, chasing this heat wave as it tracked around the planet. First of all, we took imagery in American Samoa, and then tracked it as it tracked around the world. And this image, going back to this image, shows the transformation from a live reef to a bleach reef and then a dead reef in a very short period of time. Fortunately, in American Samoa, most of the reefs bounced back and weren't impacted in a major way from the bleaching event. But this particular reef was particularly exposed and suffered heavy loss of coral reef. But it's not just the heating event underwater that's the impact from climate change. It's also the storm events. And in St. Croix was hit by a major hurricane in 2016. And we went back to visit that to see the aftermath underwater. And that's sort of the devastation that you see. Some of these elkhorn corals that have been around for such a long time, devastated by the hurricane activity. Now, fortunately, there's huge difference in vulnerabilities of reefs. Some reefs are far less vulnerable than others. And we launched a project called 50 Reefs, really to identify almost the perfect portfolio of reefs where we should be investing our sort of protection efforts and bolstering protection efforts. And that's not the only sort of good news, that we can target protection efforts. There's also sort of great activity going on in places like Hawaii. This is the Hawaiian Institute of Marine Biology, really studying heat-resistant corals and whether or not we can introduce heat-resistant corals in critical locations. And there's also been huge progress being made in restoration. This was a site that we visited before restoration and then after the restoration. And this reef was recovered in just 3 years, and the fish populations were back, almost 100% coral cover. And with the right investment in the right locations, we can make a big impact. Now, one question we often get asked is, what can I do? And this is a question from the general public. And we sort of normally come back with 3 things. One is getting informed. Chasing Coral, directed by Jeff Walowski, does an amazing job of telling the story of what's happening to coral reefs. But then it's also about getting involved and supporting marine protection. We've recently launched a campaign with Adobe and UN Environment called theoceanleague.org, where people can show their support for marine protection in a really positive way. And it's critical that it isn't just the usual sort of environmental activists that's showing support for action, but it is the general public. And then finally, it's about climate action. And there's so many things that people can be doing to have a major impact for coral reefs, because coral reefs really are on the front line of climate, and they need to be like the poster child of climate action. And with that, I will hand back to the rest of the panel to include their thoughts on what should be done or how the public can get involved.